Good morning or afternoon, everyone. We'll let the Zoom room populate. Laura, how much time do you think we spend every year while Zoom rooms populate?
I think we spent a lot of time waiting for that to happen. And I always say, how many times do we say you're on mute? I feel like I should have a little like to track how many times I say, oh, you're on mute.
You would think 5 years into the sort of post-COVID world, we'd be used to that by now,
I know.
but I do it at least once a day.
Right.
The other thing we always say is at the beginning of the presentations, yes, we will share a recording in the slides. And I always love to see how many times that question comes up as well.
Right. Will it be recorded? How do I get the slides? Although I like when they ask for the slides because then they're engaged in are not multitasking, which we sometimes are in the habit of on Zoom.
Or as my wife tells me, multitasking in life.
Yes.
So I
Multitasking.
am showing 12:01 Central, which I guess means noon 01 Pacific time. It looks like the Zoom room is fully populated. Should we kick this off?
Let's do it. Yeah, and I'll begin. And I just want to, first of all, say thank you to all the UCSD employers who have joined this webinar today. And a special thank you to Jeffrey and Kristen for their ongoing partnership at Parker Dewey. I am so excited and I'm always energized anytime I have a chance to learn about or talk about micro-internships. They are fantastic opportunities for our students to engage with all of you as employers on project-based work. So again, we couldn't do it without Parker Dewey's help. Jeffrey, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you employers for just being here today to be part of this webinar.
Thanks so much, Laura. And again, huge kudos to you and your colleagues on really driving this innovative, impactful program. It's just such an honor to collaborate with folks like you who are so passionate and focused on finding finding ways to support employers and students. So I'm Jeffrey. I'm the founder of Parker Dewey. Started the organization about 10 years ago. Just a couple of very quick housekeeping notes. Yes, we will share the slides afterwards. Yes, we will share the recording. So no need to take copious notes, although obviously feel free to. In addition, the chat is open. Feel free to ask any questions or comments along the way. I'm usually pretty good at keeping an eye on it along the way, and we'll try to answer as we go through, but we'll certainly make sure there's time at the end for any questions, comments, whatever that come up. So again, just as I'm kicking this off, I'd love to hear from the employers on this call if there's specific challenges you're trying to solve, specific goals. Are you getting enough candidates, or is it around how do we build relationships with students earlier? Is it around selection, retention, any number of things? Again, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll make sure we try to hit some of those challenges throughout the discussion. So for today's conversation, one of the things we're going to talk about is a scalable strategy to help you engage and build relationships with the highly motivated UC San Diego students via what we call micro-internships. And if you're new to this term, no worries. We'll talk about what they are, how to get started, how to leverage them. For those of you who have heard about micro-internships before, I want to talk through, again, at least how we define them. So while we pioneered this concept almost a decade ago, we love seeing it continue to take off and grow. But we have very specific ways that we think about them, making sure they're as impactful and accessible as possible. We're also going to talk about how you can leverage these not as a replacement for anything you're doing tied to campus recruiting or the great relationships you're developing with Laura and her colleagues, but as a complement to enhance the career fairs that you're visiting, to enhance the in-person events and info sessions, to enhance what you're already doing. So for today's presentation, we're going to hit three things. One, what micro-internships are. Two, why they work. And three, how you can implement them at your organization. Does that sound good, Laura? Perfect. So real quickly, I have the opportunity to, as the founder of Parker Dewey, to really connect with hundreds of colleges and universities nationwide to really support their students and recent grads, helping them find those full-time jobs and internships and even among micro-internships. And at the core, that's what we do here. The micro-internships are not a replacement for summer internships. They're not a replacement for full-time hires. They're not a relationships for the deep relationships, a replacement, sorry, for the deep relationships you're building with Laura and her colleagues. But as I said, very much a complement. And a key part of the success of this, the reason it's so effective, is these micro internships are real experiences that drive real benefits. For employers, it helps them engage and assess candidates, whether it's around getting through the noise to drive interest, reaching those students that are aligned with your hiring needs but might otherwise be getting missed, and ultimately nurture the relationships that lead to better hiring outcomes, whether it's for summer internships or full-time roles. And the reason it works is this is how the students want to be recruited. And we'll get into some stats around how 95% of college students talk about this is how they want to be recruited. They're getting paid for real resumeable experience. They're getting to learn about your organization beyond what they could find from a website or an info session or even a job shadow. Again, not to replace those things, but very much as a complement. And for them to showcase their skills beyond what you can find from a resume or a transcript or even an interview. So let's talk about the early recruiting challenges, because again, Parker Dewey is not just another recruiting tool, but it's rather a strategic hiring shift, if you will. And again, these are some of the things that we're hearing. We're hearing that traditional early career hiring is not working. 71% of college students say the process doesn't let them effectively demonstrate their skills. 71%. 55% of college students leave their first job within their first year. Again, it's crazy. Massive turnover. Companies are spending massive amounts of money. Students are investing so much time, and almost half of them are leaving within the first year. And hiring managers struggle to assess skills beyond a resume or an interview. Again, we may all know that the students coming from UCSD are amazing, hardworking, smart, but what about that hiring manager that only wants to recruit at his or her alma mater or is focused on a certain major or GPA? This is a great way to get through that noise. The second is the cost of getting it wrong is high. As I mentioned, the cost per hire is rising. According to NACE, it's north of $6,000. Employers are spending time and resources beyond this, engaging candidates that may not be the right fit or who don't stay. One of the things that's also coming up, and I don't know for those of you on the NACE board, renegs are continuing to increase, which is shocking to me. I would have thought in this environment we would have seen it go down, but it continues to go up. And then finally, the stakes are higher than ever. How are you handling it? How are you assessing fit earlier in the process? How can you evaluate candidates beyond the real work? Well, the nice thing is these micro internships let you build relationships and assess candidates before making that hiring investment, not just of money and time. The status quo is expensive and ineffective. This is a great way to break through. So again, real quickly, a couple of things, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts, I promise. The early career hiring is not just about filling the jobs, it's about building a talent pipeline. Students are looking to learn about organizations and get that real world experience, and traditional internships are limited in that they only capture a very, very small percentage of the talent. Again, because it's a big investment. It was one of the college students described it, and it was less creepy when she did versus me. The current process is essentially asking employers and students to get engaged with a summer internship or a co-op. The full-time role is like getting married. They want to go on dates. None of us would get married or engaged, at least not, I think, without going on a date. These micro internships allow students, employers to go on dates. What that means is it grows that student brand or the employer brand with students. It helps you assess student skills. It helps the students determine if you're the right relationship. It helps keep the candidates warm. And again, we're going to talk through how to use it after the career fair, or the info session, but also ensures that you have an on-demand pipeline, whether it's for if renegs happen or whether it's just as you're going into next year's recruiting cycle. And in fact, the nice thing is what we hear from employers, 98% of these micro interns exceed expectations when they're doing their projects, which is incredible. So again, very quickly, for those who haven't heard about micro internships before or may have heard about them but are confused a bit or uncertain, the way we define them is short-term paid professional projects that can be completed on demand by highly motivated college students and recent grads. And just to unpack this a bit, and we'll get more into this, the projects themselves are specific deliverables. So for instance, if you're recruiting for someone for an HR internship, an example of a project might be, we want you to pull together a presentation on best practices for new hire onboarding. If you're hiring for a marketing role that requires deep marketing analytics, an example of a micro internship might be use a public data set and create a data visualization that demonstrates trends in the blah, blah, blah space. Again, define beginning, define end, define deliverable. That's really, really key. And we have a bunch of templates that make it easy. These are short-term projects. Again, back to the metaphor before, these are not sort of semester-long things. These aren't projects you need to think about 6 months in advance. These are typically tasks that require the student to spend between 10 and 40 hours of work in total, not per day or per week. So again, very, very bite-sized. And they're tasks that you or your colleagues can quickly look at and have a pretty good read on the skills of a student. Again, beyond major and GPA, communication, problem solving, etc. They can be done year round. So this isn't just for the summer or just for winter break or just in the spring. Organizations use these year round. And in the same way, we see students use it year round. Not to be direct, if it's the middle of finals week, I don't know when finals are at UCSD, clearly the students aren't going to apply to work on your micro internship if they're taking finals. But gosh, maybe finals just wrapped up. Maybe it's an easier semester for someone. They're doing these projects not to replace the classroom experience, but they're doing it nights, weekends, in between classes, again, complementing what they're learning in the classroom. I know there's a question in here in the chat about if they're paid. Yes, 100% of these micro internships are paid. Now, tends not to be very expensive, and we'll talk a little bit how even with the pay, it still leads to a 40 to 80% lower cost per hire, but the pay is important. It's important for 2 reasons. First of all, I believe that students should be paid for their work. And I assume a lot of folks here do as well. NACE had a great ad about internships paid in bagels or paid in experiences. I just believe that students should be paid. It's a great way to build the employer brand and support. And by the way, they're doing real work. It's just fair. The second reason they're paid is it ensures these projects are accessible to all students. It ensures that employers aren't limiting just to those students who can commit to 20 hours of unpaid work on a simulation to get their foot on the door. Because a lot of students rely on part-time jobs to pay for books, rent, etc. By paying, it ensures every student has opportunity. The other reason that's important is it engages those students who may not be thinking about your industry or your company or your role. Am I really willing to commit 5 or 10 hours doing a simulation, doing a make-believe project, if I've never heard of your organization before? Or if I think the only job I want is with Google or Goldman Sachs? The answer is probably not. But if I see the opportunity to do a project where I can get some real experience and make a few $100 and learn about a company I may not have heard of before and demonstrate my skills, sign me up. And again, real behavior. Finally, these are professional projects. Again, they're not bet the company. They're not projects that require sort of 20 years of professional experience. These are the types of projects that a college student can do and thrive in. And just to show you an example, this is a real company that shared an entry-level data marketing role. This is the full-time job spec for that role. One of the things we love doing is unpacking those job specs into specific micro internship ideas. And again, as you can see from the screen, one of the projects could be, we're going to give you data. We want you to clean it and create a visualization. Or maybe you're trying to assess someone's skills in creating competitive research. Again, the third project is a perfect example. In all these cases, they don't require a heavy lift by companies. Again, the students are using public data, non-sensitive info, but it also gives you insights into the students along the way. And that's key. Again, if we were together live, I'd ask by a show of hands, how many of you have sort of heard of skills-based hiring or skills-first hiring, or if that's top of mind? It's a hot topic with SHRM and a lot of the other HR organizations. One of the things we've done is embed skills-based hiring into the process. Every step along the way, you're getting insights into skills. When students are applying for your micro-internships, you're seeing, are they a self-starter? Are they demonstrating attention to detail with short answer questions? Are they showing interest in your organization? It's sort of the antithesis of the one-click application process where companies get inundated with applications by people who may or may not actually be interested. This process itself welcomes everyone, but make sure that you can get insights into who the candidates are and make sure that they have a little bit of skin in the game. Not a lot, but a little. When they're doing the projects, you're getting insights into their skills. How do they communicate along the way? If they're sending you an email, is it riddled with typos or is it professionally written? Are they showing empathy to understand the deliverable, why the organization wants it? Are they turning it in on time? And then the work product itself, you're seeing things like problem solving and intellectual curiosity. It might be specific skills. We talked a lot about the core skills, but it might be, can Jeff use Power BI or do a DCF in Excel? Again, the beauty is this captures the skills in a way that are really hard to assess from a resume or even from an interview. Micro-internships work for students. As I said, 95% of students have said these real experiences are how they want to be recruited. It's how they want to learn about companies. It gets through the noise in a way that you don't have to spend millions of dollars trying to compete with the companies that hire 1,000 summer interns every year. This helps you stand out. It helps you build the relationships. But what it also does is it helps you reach students when they want to be reached. Again, one of the things we hear is 75% of students want to begin career exploration freshman or sophomore year. And they talk about the fact they go to a career fair and they meet the company and they're excited. And the company says, great, apply when you're a junior. We only have internships for juniors. Or we don't do internships. We only have full-time roles. We'd love to see you when you're a senior. Micro-internships are a great way to keep those candidates warm, to build the relationships with the students while they're in school. 71% of students have also said that their resume or their transcript doesn't allow them to demonstrate their skills. This lets them do it. They work for employers as well because it fits and plugs right into what you do without a heavy lift. Again, we're obviously thrilled about our partnership with Laura and her colleague at San Diego, but the nice thing is this lets you reach those students who, again, go to UCSD, but it's a single platform to reach students from around the country. So again, maybe you need a student that for whatever reason, UCSD isn't the perfect fit, or the student does, great, we can still find students who are engaged. One of the things I'm also proud of is over 80% of students come from populations underrepresented in the workforce. This is not 80% on our platform, 80% of those actually selected. And to be clear, we're not talking just racial or gender diversity. We're also talking about things like veterans, Pell eligible, first generation. Again, it creates this authentic, inclusive environment that beyond the social impact helps companies find the best talent and make sure they're not artificially limiting their pools. Again, there's some great stats here about how the students outperform relative to others. 97% exceed expectations, over 98% stay at the company at least 1 year, which is pretty incredible. For those organizations that are recruiting at scale, and again, we're not talking the companies that hire 1,000 or 2,000 summer interns, the ones that are building those great relationships at UCSD that might hire 5, 10, 20 summer interns or full-time hires every year, there's some great data available on demand. And again, it's not based upon where someone went to school or a GPA or major, but actual data tied to geographic locations. So I don't know if we have any organizations here that may be looking for people in, I'll pick my hometown, Chicago, Illinois. This lets you reach the students who go to UCSD who may be from Chicago. You can target with that level of specificity. You can see feedback on how the students perform, not just, again, can they DCF, but things like communication, timeliness, etc. You're building this pipeline of talent you can reach, not just the ones you select for the micro internships, but all of the others. So again, imagine being able to show up at the career fair, at the info session at UCSD, and reaching out to the 50 or 100 or 200 UCSD students who applied to your micro internships before you even set foot on campus. These are now engaged candidates. They're excited. You can see their answers to short questions. Invite them to visit your career fair booth. Invite them to your info session. They're already warm and you're starting to build that relationship that gives you a competitive advantage. Now, to the question of cost that came up before, these projects are paid. Again, typically we see micro internships requiring between 10 and 40 hours of work by the student. They're fixed fee projects because, again, we want this to be easy for you. As my colleague Kristen shared, tends to shake out about 20 bucks an hour, which is in line with the NACE average. So for instance, I want someone to do that market research project. I think it's going to take you about 20 hours. I may set the price as $400. Perfect. It's a perfect example of the on-demand use case that I'm showing you. You have an individual marketing role you might be trying to fill, or an individual accounting role, or a last-minute renege. It's the perfect way to use it. You set the price. 90% of that goes into the pocket of the student, by the way. What's also important is the student is on our books. So when you're engaging a micro intern, you're not dealing with 1099s or W-2s or any of that stuff. They're on our books. They're paid directly by us. And then if you decide to hire them for that summer internship or full-time role, guess what? There's no cost either. We're not a staffing firm or a temp firm. We want to encourage this to lead to hiring. We don't want to get in the way of it. So again, really, really easy to do. For those organizations that might be a little bit larger and they're starting to think about, gosh, how this could fit more strategically into that relationship building with UCSD. You're excited to build relationships with first-year UCSD students, or you're a medical device company really interested in getting to know mechanical engineering sophomores and juniors. Wonderful. We love working with organizations to create very, very small programs and pilots to prove it out. To, again, not replace the relationship you're building with UCSD, but to complement it, to get more out of it. Again, we'll talk through some use cases, but one of the prime examples is what we call the career fair booster. I alluded to it before. You're visiting the career fair, you're visiting the school. What a great opportunity to do 10 projects with students who visited your career fair booth. The costs of these programs, and again, just to show you an example, are relatively low, but they are paid. And again, back to our mission. One of the ones that we see a lot of organizations use are, again, this small pilot. It would include 10 micro internships exclusively for UCSD students aligned to your hiring needs. You would get insights not just on the 10 students who applied, but at least 50 plus engaged candidates. This could be used to fill those last minute summer internships you have. It could be used to start planning for next year or anything else. Again, this is a great way to do it. One of the things that I love about this is, as I alluded to before, the average cost per hire according to NACE is $6,000. It's the average cost per hire, with, again, about 55% of those hires leaving in the first year. Even if this leads to only one full-time hire, it's already a discount relative to what organizations are spending, and the data actually shows it leads to much more. So I'm going to take a breath, try to answer questions, or see if any come up in the chat, or Laura, if I missed anything, but happy to answer questions. I also included a couple of QR codes here. The first is, again, try one of these free trials or the pilot. The first QR code is a great example where you can put in a job description, and we'll do all the work. We'll go through, we'll sort of cross-reference and give you suggestions on micro internships. We make it really, really easy. And then if you have other questions, you want to meet with me or someone else on the team, again, you can schedule that right here. Let me try to hit the questions. I'm going to work backwards. We just got a great one from Megan about how the pay exchange works between the employer and the student. Great question. I'm going to give the example with the single projects because it's the easiest to sort of go through. If you set a project as $400 and you pick the UCSD student to do it, we would send you an invoice for $400. You could put it on a corporate card, you could pay by a check, ACH, whatever. We're pretty easy, other than we don't take Bitcoin. So you would pay when you mark the project is complete, we pay the student directly. The student is on Parker Dewey's books. 90% of what you pay is what the student sees. So your $400 project, the student would see at $360. Parker Dewey retains that 10%, and that covers our direct cost of having them on the payroll, issuing 1099s and W-2s, et cetera. We want this to be very, very, very easy for you. And then, to the extent you decided 1 or 10 of those individuals you wanted to make offers for summer internships or full-time roles, awesome. As one of my colleagues likes to say, we send chocolate, not a bill. We love when that happens. It goes back to our mission. Megan, I hope I answered your questions. Stephanie, great question. Do the projects need to be different from one another, or can they be the same offering for all the students? I love that question. One of the things we're seeing a lot of is, call it the audition concept. And again, I'll give an example with a medical device company, Smith Nephew, since they've talked very, very publicly about this. They were hiring actively for business development roles and were really interested in students studying mechanical engineering who may have realized they don't want to be in the lab. They offer the micro-internship. They pick something like 25 students to do the same project, which was essentially pick one of these 4 products from Smith Nephew's sort of product offerings, pick one of these 4 and create a 5-page presentation on how you would pitch it to a customer using plain vanilla language, et cetera. That was the entire project. Really, really simple. Again, Smith Nephew wasn't sharing access to anything sensitive. The students were using public info. Now, Smith Nephew wasn't expecting the students to have perfection, but they were very interested in understanding how the students approached the project. Were they focused on the right things? Could they take technical specs and make them seem plain English? But they were also interested in engaging those mechanical engineering students who may not have realized there were roles in sales. Of the 25 students who submitted to work, 19 Smith Nephew decided to interview. One of the students raised his hand and said, you know what, not the right role for me. Okay, better to figure it out up front. Smith Nephew interviewed 18 of the students. I think they ultimately made offers to 16, of which 15 accepted. A year later, all of them are there, 100% in a sales role, actually a year and a half, including one of the new hires that got an Employee of the Year award. But again, back to the question, sorry, I digressed a bit. It was a great way to compare and contrast. It was a great way to see, again, how the students did. Could they understand a complicated project or a complicated product and convey it effectively? Did they turn their work in on time? Did they communicate effectively? Again, it was a really great way to audition. And in that case, they were using the same project for 25 students. Another organization in marketing took more of a cross-training approach. They had 5 students do the same project tied to competitive analysis. Of those 5, they decided to offer 3 of them an opportunity to do another marketing project in marketing analytics. Then they decided to have a couple of them do another project in content creation, and essentially assessing different skills along the way. One last example, and I promise I'll take a breath, is that one of the HR leaders, talent acquisition leaders, had a great idea, which I never thought of. She was running the projects herself, where she said, we want you to do a competitive analysis. She had 10 kids do the project, really straightforward, defined, deliverable. She then went to the hiring manager with the resumes of the 10 students and the 1-page work product of all 10 and said to the hiring manager, here's 10 candidates. Here's the 7 I think you should interview, but you pick yourself. the hiring manager thought it was the greatest thing. Instead of just looking at a resume where, again, they default to who has the highest GPA or major or happen to have gone to my school, they were able to see all that stuff. But more important, they were looking at these one-page work samples. And it was giving them insights beyond what you could find from the notes of a phone screen or something else. And the hiring manager thought it was the greatest thing. Even better is when that hiring manager was interviewing the 6 or 7 candidates, it wasn't a tell me about a class or what's your biggest strength or weakness interview question. It was based upon that real experience. When you were doing the competitive analysis, why did you decide to focus on these companies? What stood out? And what it did is it drove the hiring manager to actually use a behavioral interviewing strategy in an authentic, sustainable way. Sorry, I rambled. I'm trying to see what questions I may have missed. Kristen or Laura, anything you want me to make sure I hit either if I missed or in general?
I just want to jump in. First of all, thank you, Jeffrey and Kristen, for answering the chat. I just want to share from the student's perspective because I have the privilege of hearing the excitement and the outcome from the students having gone through micro-internships. And our students deeply appreciate the opportunities that all of you as employers are providing them, and they really love the model. They love the short, quick, project-based, because as you said, Jeffrey, it really allows students to showcase their talents, where sometimes some of our students get caught up in the interview process or the nerves get the best of them, and then they feel, oh, they didn't see all the good work that I'm doing or all the research or the patents I have, right? And so this really allows the opportunity to build that bridge for students to really start from their skill, their talent, their expertise, to really dig into a project. And it really helps employers really see deeply the skill and strengths of our students. So again, students love them. They always come back. They want more. So I really appreciate this opportunity to really showcase more micro-internships for UCSD students. So thank you, Jeffrey and Kristen, and shout out to all of our employers who are on the call.
My pleasure. And there's a question I just found from Kayla Peacock. Great question. We hire through a merit system which requires our applicants to complete competitive exams, written and oral, and it's a good way to assess skills. Please explain how this is going to reach students more and make it more accessible for the early career individuals. I love that question. And I apologize, Kayla. I don't know what industry you're with or what organization. I'm going to try to hit generally, but please let me know if I missed the mark. First of all, I think about this, that first part of your question, how it's going to reach students more. I think about this as very top of funnel useful. So again, if the student is already planning to apply to your organization, already knows, again, I'm thinking about me when I was in college, I thought I wanted to be an accountant. I was going to apply to the Big Six. I already knew I was going to. This doesn't really matter then if I'm a Big Six trying to engage Jeff, the college student. I already know I want to reach out. What it does do is help, in my case, Coopers and Librand start to build a relationship with me, start to create a competitive advantage. But again, the vast majority of college students don't know where they want to apply. This becomes a great way to get in front of them in this low stakes, low risk way. So I, Jeffrey, may have thought I wanted to work at the Big Six, but then I see a micro internship maybe for a regional accounting firm, or I see a micro internship for PepsiCo in accounting. Ooh, do you know what? Like, my heart sort of set on the Big Six for my summer internship, but this project with Pepsi seems pretty interesting. Let me apply. Let me work on it. Again, it breaks through that noise. Second, to the comment about using exams to assess skills, I agree. There's certain roles where that exam is necessary, especially some of the technical ones where certain technical certifications, or think accounting with a CPA, without a doubt. One of the things that we hear a lot from employers when they're using other assessments is how well this teases out those core skills. Again, some people call them soft skills. It's sort of one of my pet peeves. But think about things like communication, problem solving, coachability, grit, attention to detail. These micro internships often tease out those skills that are difficult to assess from cognitive or non-cognitive assessments. What they also do is they tease out the skills earlier in the process. before you start spending time on interviews, before you are flying people to the offices and everything else. Let's tease these things out up front. Trying to see if there were any other. A great question. So Kristen, I represent a network. Interns expected to write news stories for live newscast a few hours a day, work in the newsroom, have to train them to use the writing program. I think this is a great way to see. Do you have a recommendation how the system can be used for what we're looking for? Sorry, I was paraphrasing since everyone can see the chat question. I think it's a great question. Perfect micro internship for that is we want you to research and draft a news story on, you could either give them a specific topic or have them come up with one on their own. That is a perfect example of a micro internship. We've seen it used over and over and over across industries. It's not that you're going to take that story and put it on air tomorrow, but it very quickly helps you understand, does this student understand the type of story that our newscast would cover? So are they picking something about sports when your newscast is specifically focused on politics? Teases that out. You can quickly understand their writing style. Is it professional or does it communicate in the tone that you're used to communicating with your audience? And again, there's no good, bad. It's just about understanding the fit. It's about understanding how well they're able to craft that story. Are they hitting the key points? Again, think about it very much as that top of funnel. It's the way to build that relationship with that student and see their skills before making that investment on the on-site summer internship. And again, to be crystal clear, I am a believer in summer internships. I'm a particular believer in the 10-week on-site summer internship and the full-time on-site role. I think on-site is incredible, especially early career. It lets you get more insights into the candidate, or into the hire. But what it also does, it helps the coaching, it helps their development. The micro internships are remote, not to replace the on-site, but it ensures that student at UCSD can participate, even if they're in classes during working hours, even if the role is in San Diego, but maybe sort of geographically inconvenient for a student to get to during working hours. Again, these remote projects are that top of funnel. It's the date before that higher stakes engagement of your internship. I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Perfect. No one's ever called me perfect. I appreciate that. Kayla had a follow-up about assessing how they may react to critique and office culture as opposed to hard skills. Yes, it certainly can tease that out. It's funny, one of the things we talk about a lot, we do a ton with student athletes. Because again, a lot of student athletes get missed in the process, but employers sort of recognize how valuable they are to hire because teamwork, grit, time management, one thing that comes up a lot to this question is coachability. One of the things we'll see with micro internships is students will turn in the work, and it may be a draft of something, and whether it's the HR team or the hiring manager will give some feedback. How does the student react to that feedback? Do they get sort of defensive about it, or do they take it and refine their work? In the Smith-Nephew example, one of the things they did, in addition to creating the presentation, they invited the students to do a 10-minute sort of live presentation to some of the hiring managers. Again, great way to see how the students react to that. Megan had a question about, are these only remote, and have you ever developed projects in the mental health and special ed space? Even pre-COVID, about 97% of the micro internships are remote, and that continues to be the case. Every now and then we'll see a slight exception, but we strongly recommend remote for the reasons I said before. It's a great way to engage those students and build the relationship before bringing them on site. In the example you gave with the mental health and special ed space, that becomes especially important. We see that a ton with education overall and healthcare, also financial services. Again, there's a number of areas where having someone on site for a short-term project becomes more, for lack of a better term, risky. Because again, you're going through certifications and training and everything else. We like the micro internships as a feeder for those programs. actually know a little bit about the special ed space, worked with a company that did special education services for juveniles, so know that very, very well. Perfect example of a micro internship we've seen in that space is we want to have a student analyze adaptive learning platforms and put together a presentation on the 5 different platforms and what you would recommend for our population. Or we want you to create a lesson plan for individuals with special needs tied to blank. Again, in both of those cases, you're not actually engaging with the individuals in your locations, but you're starting to demonstrate both those technical skills. Does Jeff understand virtual learning platforms? And then also those non-technical, the communication, et cetera. So again, happy to talk through some other very, very specific examples. Mohan, we see a ton of usage for startups. In some cases, it's because the startup knows how difficult it is to make that first hire and how important it is to get right. So we'll see a ton of usage. We've never had a marketing professional. Let's use a micro internship to sort of engage and test drive people, or to determine, do we need a full-time marketing professional? Let's have some micro internships do the work, do social media content calendar, and measure the ROI. Jared asked a question about mentoring. Again, love that question. The answer is 100% yes. So while we like to pitch this as a very low stakes, low commitment, easy way to start to engage the students, we'll find a lot of organizations want to take it to that next level. They really want to use the time during the micro internship to mentor, the coach, to build. We think that's wonderful. We think that's actually the best use case. But some organizations, again, want to use it where talent acquisition is just giving the work product to the hiring managers. Okay, we're not judging either way. But we think there's a great opportunity tied to mentoring. One of the other things we found tied to mentoring overall is the micro internships themselves become a great catalyst for mentors. As an Indiana University alum, I'll get calls from students all the time asking me about a typical day, or are you hot? Again, the normal mentor-mentee questions that we all counsel them not to ask, but they all do. One of the things we found is when students are working on micro internships, it actually creates an effective catalyst for mentoring. That I could reach out to Laura, who might be an alum of my school, and instead of saying, hey, Laura, what's a typical day? It's, Laura, I'm doing a market research analysis on the K-12 school space. I know you spent time in McGraw-Hill working on K-12 schools. Can I pick your brain on my approach? Can I get some feedback? We're also seeing students engage with faculty members and other resources. Again, it's pretty incredible. Student athlete at UCSD and graduate in 23, would have loved to do this. Thank you again, Kayla. We're huge fans. We actually have some great programs we're doing with a variety of organizations tied to student athletes in general. We actually have a partnership with the National Football Foundation focused on, again, student athletes. While there's a lot of noise around the NIL stuff and people may have their own opinions, the reality is 98% of football players don't go pro. And obviously that number is even higher for athletes in other sports, including those that don't have large professional leagues. This is a great opportunity to engage them. It's a great opportunity to build those relationships and see things like the teamwork, the self-discipline, the grit. And we're working with a lot of organizations focused on programs specifically for student athletes. Again, back to my comment before, even if you have a large and effective early career recruiting program, you might find, Kayla, to your point, that student athletes can't participate. The career fair is when the students are in training or are in class, or they can't go to the info session, or they can't do the internship because they have summer training. This is a great way to still make sure you're not missing out on those incredible student athletes that have that great talent. Laura, are you willing to join Mohan's startup? I think he was kidding. Wow, that was a lot of really, really good questions. What do folks think? Any feedback on this? I'm sick of hearing myself talk. I guess not. Thank you, Megan. Again, the nice thing is, and we have an internal term for Parker Dewey. It's Jeff proof. It needs to be easy enough that I could use it in my prior life. I worked in the financial services. If I had to go to HR for approval, if I had to get legal to sign off, if I had to think hard about, I wouldn't use it. We've removed every one of those frictions, every one of those frictions. This is a perfect opportunity to sort of test drive someone. It is a recruiting tool. It's just like going to the job fair. It's just like participating in an on-campus event. It's just another recruiting tool to engage and build relationships and assess individuals who could be those summer interns. And because there's no temp to perm fee, because they're not your employees, because all the students are under end, like everything is designed to be easy. And one of the nice things about one of the reasons I get most excited is while the folks on this call are really, really thinking about, gosh, how this can help me sort of get a competitive advantage in recruiting UCSD students, for the individual hiring managers, they appreciate how this can also help them with real projects. Again, back to that example of the marketing professional who needs to create social media content, or the business development professional who's going to a conference next week and needs to crunch the list, or the HR professional who's thinking about onboarding best practices and wants to do competitive analysis. These projects help them get support on those real projects. These micro-internships, again, help recruit, but hiring managers like it because it provides that immediate support on those we should and I shouldn't tasks. And Jared, your point is right. This is a win-win. The ROI for the employers and the interns, incredible. Again, there's not many cases where it's a win-win. Think about the money spent on giving out cups and mugs at career fairs, or handing out squish balls, or hosting pizza parties. Instead, give the students what they actually want, real experiences where they can make real money. This is valuable. This is beneficial. I'll also add one other win. The school itself also wins, because one of the things we didn't talk about is Laura and the UCSD team get insights. How are their students performing? That way they can coach and support them even more. They do an incredible job, but oftentimes if it's a senior coming into the office, like you can look at certain things and you can help certain things. By the time they're a senior, again, hopefully they're already set. We know not all of them are. Through these micro-internships, they're getting feedback to understand, can we do more to support the communication skills of our learners? Are employers telling us that use of Power BI is really, really important? They're getting those insights early and when they're actionable. So again, the employers win, lowers their cost per hire, improves conversion, improves retention, decreases the number of time hiring managers get frustrated. Students win. They're getting real experiences. They're exploring careers. They're ultimately landing the right job, not one that they're going to quit in 3 months, but one that's the right job that they're already excited about. And the schools win because they're supporting the relationships with the students and the employers. I think that's it for me. Laura, anything I missed? Or Kristen?
No, it's great. Thank you again, Jeffrey. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Again, I'm thrilled. Huge kudos, Laura, to you and the entire UCSD team. This is just such an innovative, impactful program. With all of the noise out there around post-secondary education, this is a great example of how schools are supporting, again, the employers and the students to create these win-wins. And it's not just about training someone to use Python or get a badge. This is about sort of ensuring that the students are job ready and career ready, sort of in a way that everyone wins. So thank you so much. It's truly an honor to collaborate with you on this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you to our employers.
Thank you. We will, again, I'll share, Laura, I'm going to share the deck with you so you have it and you can socialize it with the participants. And again, thank you everyone for joining. This was it was such an honor. So thank you.
Thank you.